The laugh was the part that stayed with me. Not the courtroom, not the missed hearing, not 7 months of Todd standing in front of strangers painting me as a negligent mother with a talent for convenient disappearances. Not even the attorney in the gray suit who kept checking his phone like our family was a low-priority appointment running 15 minutes long. The laugh. It came from deep in his chest. Loud, genuine, the kind of laugh that doesn't care who hears it. A woman climbing the courthouse steps actually turned around to look. And then Todd, my ex-husband of 19 years, the man who used to tear up at Emma's school plays, leaned forward with that particular smile I once confused for confidence and said it loud enough for his lawyer to hear. "Melissa, come on, you're not important enough for secrets." My daughter was standing 3 feet away. Emma, 15 years old, navy hoodie, holding a paper cup of hot chocolate from the vending machine inside, the kind that burns your tongue if you sip too fast. She heard every word. I watched her face go still the way teenagers go still when they're trying to pretend they didn't hear something that just cracked something open inside them. That was the moment. Not the biggest moment in what was about to unfold, not legally, not professionally, and certainly not in terms of consequences. But that was the moment that changed the temperature of everything inside me. I was 44 years old, an Army intelligence analyst stationed near Fort Meade, Maryland. I had spent over 2 decades sitting in rooms where every word carried weight and every reaction had to be swallowed whole. I knew how to hold still. I knew how to breathe through things. But standing on those courthouse steps in yesterday's uniform with dried salt on my boots and 26 missed calls burning a hole in my coat pocket, I felt about 2 inches tall. And the part that would stay with me for months was not the humiliation. It was watching my daughter pretend she hadn't heard it. Let me back up. The night before the hearing, I was home folding Emma's basketball shorts and mentally calculating whether I'd paid the electric bill when my phone rang at 11:17 p.m. I had exactly 40 seconds to register what I was being told before I was pulling on my coat and grabbing my keys. By midnight, I was driving toward Fort Meade with a gas station coffee wedged between my knees and my hair still damp from a 3-minute shower. I left a voicemail for my attorney. I sent the only message I was cleared to send through proper channels. Emergency duty requirement. Unable to appear. Documentation will follow. That sounds cold written down. I know how it looks. But military life has a specific geometry that most people outside of it don't understand. Sometimes you drive into a building with no windows at midnight and the world you left behind has to wait. The electric bill waits. The dinner reservations wait. Your daughter's basketball game waits. A family court hearing waits. Todd knew this. He had lived with it for 19 years. He knew the dinner calls, the missed birthdays, the Christmas Eve I left a half-assembled toy in the hallway because something happened overseas that could not wait until morning. He knew what it looked like when I came home with my jaw locked, and my shoulders knotted from holding back everything I wasn't allowed to bring through our front door. Back when we were young and newly married and still slightly dazzled by each other, he used to brag about it at neighborhood cookouts. My wife does work she can't even tell me about. He said it the way some men say my wife ran a marathon or my wife got into medical school. Like her accomplishments were medals he got to wear. But somewhere between our 10th anniversary and Emma starting middle school, that pride curdled. It happened slowly, the way most damage happens in a long marriage. A comment here, an eye roll there. A joke that got just a little too sharp to be a joke anymore. The Army got the best version of Melissa. We got whatever was left over. He said it at a cookout once. Everyone laughed, including me. That's the part that embarrasses me most when I think about it now. The hearing I missed was supposed to be, according to Todd's attorney, about stability, about Emma's schedule, about what was best for our daughter. What it was actually about, though I wouldn't understand this fully until later, was money. Todd wanted more control over Emma's custody arrangement. He said I was unreliable. He said my job made me unavailable. He said our daughter deserved consistency, which was remarkable coming from a man who introduced her to his girlfriend Cheryl 2 weeks after moving out of our house. But that's the kind of logic that sounds polished in a courtroom when someone is saying it with a good suit and a calm voice. I had filed everything I was supposed to file. My attorney had already submitted documentation regarding my service obligations. There were federal protections in place for exactly these situations. But Todd wasn't interested in protections. He was interested in performance. He wanted to watch me stand in that courtroom and try to explain things I legally could not explain to people who had no frame of reference for why I couldn't. When I didn't show, he used the empty chair like a weapon. By the time I got out the following afternoon, my phone had 26 missed calls. 6 from my attorney, 4 from Todd, 3 from my sister Rachel in Ohio, which told me Todd had already been making calls. The rest were a mix of unknown numbers and automated reminders, and one voicemail from Emma where she didn't say anything for 7 full seconds before hanging up. That last one was the worst. I drove straight to the courthouse because I didn't know what else to do. Todd was outside. So was Emma. She looked at me like she wanted to run over and like she was terrified to make the wrong choice. That specific look, caught between two people she loved, trying not to hurt either one, is not something a mother forgets. Mom! Baby, I'm sorry. And then Todd made that sound. Not quite a laugh, worse than a laugh. A little exhale of contempt, low and deliberate, designed to land. Well, look who found time. I kept my voice quiet. Todd, not in front of Emma. Oh, now you care what happens in front of Emma. His attorney shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. Todd was in a rhythm. He always got that way with an audience. And then came the line, the one that changed everything, though neither of us knew it yet. You classified, he laughed. Melissa, please, you're not important enough for secrets. I didn't say anything sharp back. I didn't say anything brave. I just stood there with my hands cold inside my coat pockets, while Todd put a hand on Emma's shoulder, said, "Come on, let's get you home," and walked away like he had just won something. Emma looked back at me once, just once. I drove to a Walgreens on York Road after that because I didn't trust myself to go home yet. I bought trail mix and a bottle of water and sat in my car with the engine off while rain ticked against the windshield. I cried in short, ugly bursts, not the kind you see in movies, the kind where you get angry at yourself halfway through and wipe your face too hard. Then my phone buzzed, my attorney Denise Halpern. Melissa, do not contact Todd tonight. We need to talk first thing tomorrow. Denise was 58 years old, wore sensible shoes, kept a dish of peppermints on her desk for clients who had to swallow bad news, and once told me that panic was expensive and not to do it unless I had to. So when Denise Halpern sent a message that direct, something had shifted in a way I couldn't see yet. What I didn't know that night was that Todd had done more than mock me. What I didn't know was that by the following morning, 2 men from a Defense Department security office would be standing in the lobby of his accounting firm in Arlington, asking questions about records he had no business touching. All I knew, sitting in that parking lot, was that my ex-husband had laughed. And for the first time in a very long time, I did not feel sad enough to forgive him. I felt something quieter than anger. That was new. I got 3 hours of sleep that night, and not real sleep either. The kind where your body goes horizontal but your brain keeps pacing the room. I woke before dawn with my neck stiff from lying on top of the blanket, stood in my socks making coffee, while the local news reported traffic on I-95. Normal sounds. That was always the disorienting part of working near classified operations. The world kept moving at its ordinary pace while yours lurched sideways. Denise called at 6:12 a.m. She didn't ease into it. Todd hired a private investigator. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What? He apparently decided your leave documentation wasn't sufficient. The investigator contacted someone connected to a defense contractor, trying to verify your assignment status. I closed my eyes. Oh no. Exactly. The chair at my kitchen table made its familiar creak as I sat down. He actually did that. According to what I was told last night, yes. And now a Defense Department security office is involved because the inquiry touched protected personnel systems. I rubbed my forehead hard enough to leave marks. Todd's an idiot. No, Denise said quietly. Todd is arrogant, that's a different problem. That landed harder than I expected because it was precisely true. Todd had spent most of his adult life believing that rules were guidelines with enough flexibility for people clever enough to navigate them. He paid his taxes early. He returned shopping carts. He sent thank you cards after weddings. But he also believed, down in his bones, that consequences were things that happened to other people. Am I in trouble? I asked. That depends entirely on whether you did anything wrong. I didn't. Then breathe. Aids. I spent the rest of that morning inside a secure office at Fort Meade, trying to focus on a briefing while my thoughts kept drifting back to Todd. Military life teaches you compartmentalization whether you want it or not. Feel terrible later. Function now. I had been doing that for 22 years. During a mid-morning break, my friend Dana caught me standing at the vending machine staring at a pack of Peanut M and MS like they'd personally insulted me. You look awful, she said. Thank you. Emotionally awful. Your hair still looks regulation. Dana worked civilian intelligence support, was twice divorced, 60 years old, and had the kind of dry humor that made bad days survivable. She listened to the safe version of what I could tell her. Todd pushed too hard in court, hired someone to dig around in records he wasn't cleared to access, and when I finished, she blinked slowly. Oh, that man is stupid. Apparently. Not regular stupid, Melissa. Confident stupid. Different category entirely. That phrase followed me through the rest of the day like a shadow. By 11 a.m., when my phone was finally returned to me, I had 21 missed calls. 15 from Todd, 2 from Cheryl, 1 from Emma, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I listened to Todd's voicemails in order in my car alone. First, Melissa, call me back immediately, no greeting. Second, what the hell did you do? Third, I swear to God if you're trying to scare me. I deleted that one before it finished. Fourth voicemail, this was the one that told me everything. Underneath the anger, tucked in where he didn't realize I could hear it, was something else entirely. Something I had not heard in Todd's voice in years. Fear. 2 federal investigators came into my office this morning. My employees were there, Melissa. My employees. Not Emma, not family, his employees. That told me exactly where his mind was. At lunch, Dana and I sat outside on a bench eating salads neither of us really wanted, pretending to care about our cholesterol now that we were past 40. You going to call him back? She asked. No. Good. I stabbed a tomato hard enough to send it skidding across the container. I didn't ask for any of this. Dana looked at me for a moment. You know what I've noticed about women like you, she said. You always say that. After years of carrying everybody else, something falls apart, and the first thing out of your mouth is that you didn't ask for it. What does that mean? It means men get very comfortable standing on your shoulders. Then one day you stop holding them up, and suddenly they're convinced you attacked them. That sentence sat with me for the rest of the afternoon. Around 1:30, Emma texted, Dad looked weird today. I wrote back immediately, weird how? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, came back, like he was scared. A few minutes later, one of the ladies at his office was crying. Dana leaned over to read the screen and whistled softly. Sounds like the kingdom's getting shaky. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. Genuinely bone-tired. That's the thing nobody tells you about those moments where someone finally faces consequences. You imagine fireworks, victory, walking away in slow motion. Real life is just sitting in a government parking lot with a plastic fork in your hand wondering how your marriage became paperwork and security reviews. That afternoon, Denise forwarded me a portion of a formal notice connected to Todd's inquiry. Most of it was dense legal language, but one sentence stood out sharp and clear. Unauthorized attempts to obtain protected personnel information may trigger federal review procedures. I read it 3 times. Todd had done this to himself. Not me, not the Army, not some conspiracy against divorced accountants in expensive wool coats. Todd had opened a door he had no clearance to open, And now people with very serious credentials were on the other side of it asking questions. And then I remembered something. A neighborhood barbecue, 8 years earlier. Emma running through the yard with glow sticks after dark. One of the other husbands teasing Todd about having a wife who worked around secrets all day. Todd throwing an arm around my shoulder and grinning. "Oh, I trust Melissa," he'd said. "It's everybody else I don't trust." Back then I thought that was love. Now I understood it differently. It meant he couldn't stand not having access to every room I was in. At 4:47 p.m. my phone rang again. Todd. I almost ignored it, almost. What I said. Silence for a half-second. Then very quietly, without a single trace of that courthouse smirk, "Melissa, who are these people?" For the first time in months, Todd did not sound smug. He sounded small. And I will tell you honestly, I did not feel the satisfaction I expected. What I felt was something closer to exhaustion at how far he had driven us both to get here. "I told you," I said evenly, "you should have left it alone." That doesn't explain federal investigators showing up at my office. They're not there because of me, Todd. They're there because of what you did. He exhaled hard. "I was trying to verify whether you lied to the court. You hired a private investigator to access defense-adjacent records." "I didn't know." "No," I cut him off quietly, "you didn't care." Silence. Then, in that smooth, reasonable tone I used to despise most, the one that made him sound like the only adult in any room, "You're overreacting." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so precisely, exactly him. "You had someone try to access protected personnel records tied to military operations," I said, "because you were angry about a custody hearing. It was attendance verification. It was classified adjacent." "You always do that," he snapped, "make everything sound bigger than it is." And there it was, the real thing underneath all of it, the court filings, the attorney fees, the carefully chosen words about stability and routine and Emma's best interests. Resentment. Not of me specifically, I think, but of everything I represented. A version of myself that existed outside his control. That was what he'd never been able to forgive. "Todd," I said quietly, "you stopped believing my work mattered years ago." He didn't answer, because both of us knew it was true. "I have to go," I said. And I hung up before he could respond. Emma was at my place when I got home. Todd had dropped her off early, which told me he was rattled. I found her on the couch with a bag of microwave popcorn and a baking competition on TV, looking like a teenager who had decided the best strategy for the day was to pretend the day wasn't happening. I made grilled cheese. It's what I do when I don't have the words yet. "You always make grilled cheese when you're stressed," Emma said. "That's not a no." The tiniest smile. We ate at the coffee table. Halfway through the baking show, Emma muted it. "Are you in trouble?" she asked, with work. "No." "You sure?" "I'm sure." She picked at the label on her water bottle. "Dad said people from the Pentagon came to his office." I looked at her carefully. Not exactly the Pentagon, but government people, yes. Were they mad? I thought about Todd's panicked voicemails. His receptionist probably watching him sweat through his dress shirt while men with federal credentials asked calm, methodical questions in his conference room. "Probably disappointed," I said. Emma laughed unexpectedly. "Dad hates disappointing people." "No," I said before I could stop myself. "Your father hates looking bad. Those are different things." The second it came out, I regretted it. Emma noticed. She always noticed. "You still defend him," she said quietly. I turned back to the stove too quickly. "Emma, no. Even after everything." I set the spatula down slowly. "I don't want you hating your dad." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that pinned me in place. "Dad acts like your job was something you did to him." I stared at her. Not something I did for our family. Not something that paid our mortgage, funded her braces, covered medical bills when Todd's mother got sick. Something I did to him. That was it, that was the exact shape of it. That evening, after Emma went upstairs, Denise texted me. Found inconsistencies in Todd's financial filings. Substantial ones. We need to talk tomorrow. I stared at that word, substantial. My stomach went cold in a different way than it had all day. Because if Todd was hiding income, then this custody battle wasn't entirely about custody. It was about money, about getting a favorable ruling fast before the numbers caught up with him. He was using Emma as a clock. Denise's office the following morning smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. She came out wearing navy slacks and the expression of someone who had already read something that annoyed her deeply. She shut her office door without ceremony. Todd has been underreporting income. How much? Enough to matter. He claimed a significant income drop, but his firm paid out deferred compensation through a separate account. He also routed consulting income through an LLC he didn't fully disclose. I looked at the papers she slid across the desk. This is why he wanted the ruling fast. That's my belief. Your promotion package is pending, correct? I nodded. If your income increases, that affects support calculations. If his hidden income surfaces, that affects them far more. He had every financial reason to push for an outcome before either of those things happened. And there it was, the whole picture finally lit. Todd hadn't been fighting for Emma, he'd been fighting for the numbers. I drove back toward Fort Meade in silence. No radio, just road noise and the GPS telling me things I already knew. My mind kept skipping backward through years of memories, trying to locate the exact moment the man who once held my hand through the harbor tunnel became someone who would use our daughter as a legal strategy. I couldn't find it. That's not how slow damn age works. By that afternoon, Todd had started calling mutual friends. I knew because Rachel called me from Ohio while I was standing in the produce section at the grocery store, holding a bag of baby carrots I had no memory of picking up. What is going on with Todd? She asked. He called Mark, I said. He sounded panicked, Melissa, fast, angry, like he was explaining something before anyone could accuse him. That's what guilt sounds like on Todd, I said. Should he be scared? I looked at the carrots in my hand. Yes, but not of me. That was the truth. I wasn't calling in favors. I wasn't working any angles. I was barely keeping my laundry done. Todd had opened his own door. He just spent years assuming there were no doors I could walk through that he wasn't invited into. That evening, he tried a different approach. At 6:18, he sent me a photo. Old, the three of us at the National Aquarium in Baltimore when Emma was maybe 4. She had both hands pressed against the glass, watching a stingray float by. I was laughing at something Todd had said. He was looking at me, not the camera. For a full second, I forgot to breathe. Then his message came through below it. We used to be good together. I don't want this to get ugly. That was Todd's particular gift. He always knew exactly where the soft places were. We had been good once. That was the cruelest part. Not every man who becomes someone disappointing starts out that way. Some just get smaller over time, quietly, and then punish you for continuing to grow. Before I could decide whether to respond, Emma came downstairs. She had her backpack slung over one shoulder and a look on her face that made me set my phone down. What's wrong? She leaned against the kitchen counter and didn't answer immediately. Dad called, she said finally. What did he say? She swallowed. He wanted to know if I remembered what we practiced. The kitchen went absolutely still. What did you practice? Emma looked at the floor. He said if anyone asked, I should say that you choose the army over me. I heard nothing for a moment. Not the refrigerator, not the neighbors, not anything. He said it would help, Emma whispered. I didn't want to say it. I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into my arms. I know. He said it was for the case. No, baby, I held her tighter. That wasn't for the case. That was using you. There it was, the line I had been circling for months. Said out loud, clean and honest. Todd was using our child. I held Emma for another minute, kissed the top of her head. And then I picked up my phone and called Denise. When she answered, I said, "No more soft approach." She was quiet for half a second. "Good," she said. I deleted Todd's aquarium photo that night. Not in anger, just quietly, because some things only look like love from far enough away. The final hearing was on a Tuesday morning in late October, cold enough for coats, not cold enough for snow. I remember the temperature because I stood outside the Baltimore County Circuit Court, gripping a paper coffee cup, so hot it burned through the cardboard sleeve, watching people hurry past with scarves pulled up around their ears, and thinking that family court was so much harder than anything abstract. Threat assessments, data breaches, systems failures, those were problems you could think your way through. This was personal. Family court knew exactly which floorboards creaked. Denise met me on the steps carrying 2 legal folders and wearing her deliberate expression of mild irritation, the one she wore before difficult hearings, because it kept people from bothering her with small talk. "You eat half a banana." "That's depressing." She produced a granola bar from her purse. "Eat." Inside the courthouse, wet wool and old paper and a toddler crying while his father bounced him on one hip. The ordinary weight of other people's hard days, stacked in rows under fluorescent lighting. Todd was already there. Of course he was. Navy suit, polished shoes, an American flag pin so shiny it caught the light every time he moved. I almost laughed. Almost. Then I saw Emma sitting near the front beside the court-appointed guardian ad litem, looking pale and younger than her 15 years, and that tightened something in my chest immediately. Todd saw me and straightened. For one strange second, I saw the ghost of who he used to be, that easy, polished confidence, the smile that used to fill a room. Then I saw how tired he looked around the eyes. Good suits only go so far. Cheryl was nowhere in sight. Interesting. The judge that morning was Judge Holloway. Silver hair cut short, early 60s. The energy of someone who had run out of patience for performance approximately a decade ago. Todd's particular brand of charm, the kind that worked best on people who wanted to be won over, was going to find very cold ground here. Todd's attorney opened first. He spoke smoothly about consistency and routine and emotional stability, and within the first 5 minutes he mentioned my absence at the previous hearing. He called it, pointedly, unexplained, like I'd skipped court to run errands. Denise sat beside me writing notes in blue ink, completely unruffled. Then it was my turn. I testified about Emma's schedule, her school, her basketball, which shoes she wore, which mornings she hated scrambled eggs, how she went quiet when something was bothering her. The shape of a child's life lives mostly in details no one applauds. Todd's attorney stood for cross-examination with the confident smile of a man who believed he had already won. "Mrs. Grant, you claim your absence from the previous hearing involved a classified military matter. Yet you've provided remarkably little documentation. Because there are legal restrictions on operational details." "Convenient," he said. Denise objected, sustained. But the point was already planted and Todd, sitting beside his attorney, leaned back slightly. He thought this was going his way. Then Denise stood. "Your Honor, before we proceed further, I'd like to submit supplemental documentation received last evening." Todd's attorney frowned. The judge accepted the folder. The courtroom got very quiet. I watched Judge Holloway's eyes move steadily across the pages. Stop, move backward. Her expression shifted, not dramatically, just colder. She looked up over her glasses. "Mr. Wallace, were you aware there was an ongoing Defense Department review connected to your client's attempts to obtain protected personnel information?" Todd's attorney blinked. "I what?" "The court has received confirmation that Mrs. Grant's absence was connected to protected federal duties covered under applicable service member protections." She continued reading. "Additionally, documentation here suggests unauthorized investigative efforts were initiated by Mr. Grant." The courtroom stayed silent enough to hear paper moving. Todd's attorney looked stunned, which meant Todd had not told his own lawyer everything. Classic Todd, always managing the narrative privately, revealing only the portions that served him. Judge Holloway looked directly at Todd now. "Mr. Grant, Family court is not the appropriate venue for litigating classified personnel matters through intimidation or unauthorized access attempts. Todd opened his mouth, closed it again. For the first time since our divorce began, he looked genuinely embarrassed. Not angry, not calculating, just embarrassed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt relieved, like someone had finally turned the lights on after months of sitting in a distorted version of reality. Then the guardian ad litem leaned toward the judge. A quiet conversation, a nod. "Emma," Judge Holloway said gently, "I understand you wish to make a statement." Every muscle in my body tightened. Emma stood slowly. She looked impossibly young. Oversized cardigan, her hands clasped in front of her, then unclasped. Todd immediately started, "Your Honor." One look from Judge Holloway silenced him. Emma swallowed, then she spoke. "My mom misses things sometimes." Her voice was quiet but steady, "but she always comes back. She works a lot, I know that, but when something's wrong she shows up." The room held very still. "My dad keeps saying my mom chooses work over us." She paused, "but I think my mom disappears when people need protecting." Todd stared straight ahead. "My dad," Emma said, her voice trembling just slightly, "disappears when things get hard." He closed his eyes, just for 1 second, but everyone in that courtroom saw it. Emma sat back down quickly, like she wanted to disappear through the floor. I wanted more than anything to go to her. I stayed in my seat, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is trust someone you love to handle their own brave moment. Judge Holloway took off her glasses slowly. Then she began speaking. Primary custody adjustments, revised financial disclosure requirements, mandatory correction of incomplete income reporting, a review of undisclosed compensation structures. Todd's face lost color with each sentence, like a man watching something he'd carefully constructed collapse in slow motion. When it was over, people filed out quietly. No dramatic music, no applause, just chairs scraping the floor, papers shuffling, the ordinary sounds of hard things ending. Todd stood near the aisle while people moved around him. For one strange second, I saw the young man who had held Emma in a hospital room 19 years ago like she was the most fragile and precious thing he had ever touched. Then that memory released, the way memories do when you finally stop holding onto them. He looked at me, not angry, not smug, just tired, the way people look when they've spent too long fighting over something ugly. I walked past him without speaking. This time, he was the one who couldn't meet my eyes. 6 months later, Emma and I were standing in the frozen food aisle at Costco, arguing about chicken nuggets. Not consequential chicken nuggets, not life-altering ones, just giant orange bag with a cartoon farm on the front, and Emma insisting, with the certainty of someone who has made a discovery that changes everything, that they were superior when made in the air fryer. "You say that about everything." "Because everything is better in the air fryer. I was right about broccoli." I looked at the bag, I looked at her, I tossed it in the cart. She smiled like she'd just won a Supreme Court case. That was what peace looked like for us. Not a grand declaration or a healed heart wrapped up cleanly. Just a Saturday morning with a wobbly cart and a daughter who teased me again, and enough space inside my chest to laugh without first checking who might use it against me. We had moved into a townhouse off Snowden River Parkway 2 months after the hearing. Beige siding, small kitchen, parking that filled up too fast if you came home after 6, but the windows caught good afternoon light, and Emma liked that her room faced a maple tree. The first night there, we ate pizza on the living room floor because the table hadn't arrived. Emma spilled garlic sauce on a box labeled bathroom stuff, and we laughed so hard we both ended up crying a little. That happens sometimes. Grief sneaks into ordinary moments, and so does healing, and sometimes it's genuinely impossible to tell the difference. Todd did not disappear from our lives. Life rarely gives women clean endings. He still had visitation. He still texted. He still attempted, occasionally, to sound wounded when a boundary inconvenienced him. At first, every message made my stomach clench. "Can we talk like adults? This isn't healthy for Emma. I hope one day you'll understand I was scared too." The old me would have answered immediately, softened, managed his feelings so the air pressure in the room would drop back to something manageable. The new me waited, sometimes hours, sometimes a full day. Sometimes Denise helped me reduce 3 emotional paragraphs into one clean sentence. Please send schedule questions through the parenting app. That sentence became my favorite piece of writing I had ever produced. Todd despised the parenting app, which made me trust it completely. After the hearing, the Defense Department review did what government reviews do. It moved slowly, asked methodical questions, generated paperwork. Todd was not arrested. His firm did not collapse overnight. No one filmed his downfall. But consequences arrived in quieter ways. One client left after the inquiry became known. Then another. His firm partners quietly redirected certain sensitive accounts away from his desk. Cheryl moved out before Thanksgiving and posted a photo of herself hiking in Sedona with a caption about choosing peace over chaos. Dana sent me the screenshot. I stared at it for 10 seconds. Good for Sedona, I said. Dana laughed so hard, she nearly choked on her coffee. Todd eventually sold the Arlington condo he'd loved mentioning in conversation and moved into an apartment near Rockville Pike. Emma came home from a weekend visit and told me, with careful neutrality, that he had bought a fake plant. That's fine, I said. Lots of people have fake plants. He named it Winston. I pressed my lips together. Emma pressed hers together. We lasted approximately 4 seconds before we both lost it entirely. I know how that sounds. Maybe it was unkind, but there are moments after long grief when laughter isn't cruelty, it's oxygen. My promotion came through in January. I found out while sitting in my car outside a Dunkin', on Route 175, eating a breakfast sandwich that had gone cold while I read the email twice to be certain I understood it correctly. 22 years of early mornings, missed holidays, stress weight I still carried no matter how many times I downloaded fitness apps and lied to them about starting Monday. Rooms with no windows. Coffee that was always slightly wrong. And there it was, promotion confirmed. I called Emma. She answered breathless from a school hallway. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I got it. A pause, then she screamed loud enough that I had to move the phone away from my ear. That night she made a banner out of printer paper and tape. The letters were crooked. 1G was backwards. I kept it on the refrigerator for 3 months. Todd sent flowers the next day. White lilies, no card except his name on the florist's slip. I stood in the doorway holding them, not angry exactly, more tired by the predictability. Lilies had been my favorite for years. What he'd forgotten was that I stopped feeling that way after his mother's funeral, when the church was so thick with the smell of them that grief began to have a specific scent in my memory. Emma came downstairs, looked at the vase, and wrinkled her nose. Those are a lot. Your dad sent them. Oh, she studied me carefully. You okay? I nodded. Then I picked up the vase, walked next door, and gave them to Mrs. Alvarez, who opened the door in slippers and said, "Beautiful." Who died? An old habit, I told her. She didn't understand, but she hugged me anyway. That spring, Emma joined track. I made every meet except one. The one I missed I told her about in advance, apologized once, and did not allow to become an exhibit in any ongoing legal proceedings. When she ran, she looked awkward and determined and exactly like herself. I sat in the bleachers wrapped in a blanket, cheering louder than was strictly necessary, the way people cheer when they've earned the right. One evening in May, Todd sent a long message directly to my phone, bypassing the parenting app entirely. Melissa, I've been thinking about everything. I know I went too far. I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you and Emma. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry for what I put you both through. I read it twice, then I set the phone down and made tea. That sounds like a small thing. It wasn't. There had been a time in my life when Todd's regret would have pulled me across the room like a leash. When I would have answered immediately, found the generous interpretation, cracked the door open, because kindness had always felt like an obligation I owed everyone who asked for it. This time I let the kettle boil. I let the tea steep. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the evening light move slowly across the floor. Then I typed back, "I hope you mean that. Please keep future communication on the parenting app unless it's an emergency." My thumb shook slightly when I hit send. Healing doesn't always feel peaceful while you're inside it. Sometimes it feels cold and rude and unnatural, especially when you spent years believing that love meant immediate access to every part of you. But that night, I slept better than I had in months. A few weeks later, Emma and I drove out to Sandy Point State Park on a windy Sunday. The Bay Bridge stretched across the water in the distance, pale and steady against a washed-out blue sky. We sat on a blanket with sandwiches from Wawa, and Emma told me at length about a boy named Caleb who was obviously not her boyfriend, which meant he absolutely was. I listened, really listened. No phone in my hand, no apology warming up in my throat, no part of me bracing for someone else's judgment of how I was handling this moment. Just my daughter's voice, and the gulls yelling over the water, and mustard on my sleeve. At some point, Emma leaned her head against my shoulder. "You seem different," she said. "Different how?" She thought about it for a while, like you stopped asking permission inside your own head. I looked out at the water for a long time. That kid always walked straight to the center of things. "I got tired," I said finally. She nodded, "Good." "Good." "Yeah," she picked at a blade of grass. "You were tired in the wrong direction before." I didn't fully know what that meant, and I understood it completely. For years I had worn myself down trying to be seen clearly by someone who had made up his mind not to look. I thought if I explained myself better, loved more patiently, stayed calmer, forgave faster, eventually Todd would acknowledge what was true. But some people don't misunderstand you by accident. Some people need you small so they can feel large. And the longer you stay, the more you start to mistake their need for the truth. The sweetest revenge was not the courtroom, not the federal inquiry, not the moment Todd's confident smile finally turned against him on the courthouse steps or inside that hearing room. It was this. A quiet life where my daughter knew the truth without being coached into it. A phone I did not have to answer immediately. A locked door when I needed one. A middle-aged woman in her own kitchen at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, eating air-fryer chicken nuggets and laughing with her child, not performing contentment for anyone, not bracing for it to be used against her later. Just living it. For 22 years I had made myself useful. Useful to the Army, useful to Todd, useful to his mother when the hospitals overwhelmed him, useful to Emma's school, useful to a country that could ask everything from me and require silence in return. And I had quietly, gradually, without ever making a conscious choice, stopped being useful to myself. I mattered, not because I could prove it to a judge, not because I could make Todd admit it, not because my promotion paperwork confirmed it in government language, just because it was true. It had always been true. That was enough. If you've ever spent years trying to prove your worth to someone who had already decided not to see it, if you've ever stood in a parking lot crying in short, ugly bursts, wondering how everything went the sideways, I want you to hear this. You don't need their acknowledgement, you never did. You just need to stop asking for it. Not all at once. Just one honest boundary at a time, one sentence that doesn't apologize for itself, one moment where you let the kettle boil and the tea steep before you answer. And when peace finally comes, and it does come, let it.